So, welcome back everyone to the final part of the Dream Plan Build series. And it's the day after the show. Got back yesterday evening and went ahead and just set up a little bit here, just pretty much final thoughts on the display and what have you. I didn't film anything at the show. I did get some photos which I'll show at the end of the video here. But yeah, just going to go over a couple things with this display here real quick. And that'll be it. Let's start with this hayfield. And as you may know from previous parts, if you've been watching, this was originally supposed to be a cornfield in my setup, but due to budget restraints, I just couldn't afford to do that, so I had to go with a more simplistic setup. And I think overall, it still turned out good. I did manage to put in my tree line, although these trees are off of another display I have, so they'll be going back, and I'll be getting trees later on just for this display here. And I thought this little entryway into the field, thought that turned out pretty good. Looks nice. Oh, and I almost forgot the fence line across the field. Of course, most of it's down from the truck, but yeah, nice little fence line going along there, and bit of time into putting that fence together. You saw that back in the last video. But yeah, I guess in the end this field didn't turn out too bad. I'd still like to have a cornfield though, but hayfields seem to work just fine. Moving over here to the interstate, of course, got the guardrail that runs the length of this side here, and I put in a few pieces of the mangled up guardrail, but as you saw, I do have some fresh guardrail to run along here as well. And of course, got the guardrail there in between the bridges as well. And the roads I thought turned out pretty good. The only issue I have with the roads is that the yellow line and the white line here should be vice versa. And unfortunately, not paying attention, painted them on like this. So that'll have to be corrected. But the spacing of the lines and length and everything is correct, so I'm happy with that. Over in this corner is the shed, the crossing, and the pasture. And we'll start with the shed here. And if you remember, this was another setback I had because I ended up knocking this off the heater when the paint was curing, and it fell on the floor, broke. I had to go back and reassemble it, repaint it. And I was actually working on this up to the morning of the show, because I actually, after I got the rest of the table done at the show there, I went ahead and started decaling this shed. And that being the case, it was sort of a last minute deal. The decals aren't exactly the way I want them. It's more or less, I did this just so the shed would have a finished look. But what I want to do is go back and redo the decals, or not really redo them, but reposition them, or maybe put in different decals. Not 100% sure. But it's not going to be too hard to take the decals off. They're just stuck on there with glue stick or blue tack for those of you that are in the UK. But even though this was kind of rushed down to the last minute, still turned out pretty good, I think. A lot of people were impressed with it as well. And moving over to the pasture here, not a whole lot to say about this. You know, it's just a pasture field. I used Erdl fencing, and I thought around the gate there turned out real nice. And then also we got the crossing. And it was one of those deals at first, this large flangeway gap here on the crossing was really nagging at me there for a while, but honestly, I think I can live with that. I don't think it really takes away from the look of the crossing. And I mean, another thing I like is I'm glad I went with the gray blend ballast, because in my opinion this looks a lot better than the regular gray that I usually used. So I mean, I'll probably be using this in the future as well if I ever go and do more displays with tracks on them. Something else I was disappointed with is I wanted to paint double yellow lines on this road right here, and due to time restraints I wasn't able to do that, because me and my friend, we were actually up till midnight just painting the lines on the interstate, which was pretty much the last thing we had to do. But being that this road, in my opinion, isn't as important as the interstate was, I decided not to paint the yellow lines and instead call it good for the night and go to bed. But yeah, that's something else I would have liked to have seen, was some lines on this road. And this road here, leading back past the shed and to the end of the table here, I'm not satisfied with this because the road blends in to the drives around the shed too much. And I think a good way to solve this dilemma may be to go in and either paint lines on this or dirty up around the shed a little more, because I did put dirt in here, as you can see, but the road just still blends into the drives of the shed too much. So yeah, that's something that's gonna need improved. So the last thing is these bridges, and I hate to say it, but these were a major headache to try to finish. And it's all because of this stuff right here. This is Rust-oleum spray paint, and this isn't the original can I got, because the original can was a shade or two darker. And I ended up using this can right here because I painted the bridge supports with the original paint one day, and then the next day I went to paint the bridges themselves, and the can basically clogged on me. And I've had this happen with every can of this Rust-oleum paint that I've got. And it's all because of this right here. Any angle spray with comfort tip. Now, what I do when I use spray paint is when I'm done, I will flip the can upside down and spray out the nozzle until air comes out and no paint. But with the any angle spray, you cannot do that, so therefore you cannot clean the nozzle. And I mean, every freaking can of this stuff I've had, it's clogged. And Rust-oleum does give you instructions on how to unclog the can, but that's for the nozzle itself, not for the little straw that goes inside the can. And that's where it clogs every single time. So, just as a word of advice, Rust-oleum paint, I do not recommend it. I mean, I will not doubt there are guys out there that have had luck with the stuff and no issues, but me on the other hand, like I said, I would not recommend it. What I'd say to do with it is as follows. So despite that little issue with the paint, I think the bridges still came out good in the end. And even though they're not as good as I would have hoped for them to be, they're definitely satisfactory in my books. And a lot of people seem to think they look pretty good as well. One more thing I'd like to mention about this display is some of the changes I'd like to make to it in the future, because I do have plans to take this to next year's show. And my plan is to have the setup the way it was when I originally made my plans. So right here, I want to go ahead and put it in a cornfield, but it's going to be a removable cornfield. So I can go ahead and maybe have a wheat field instead, or go back to this hay field here. And I mean, I'm going to get some better trees to put here as well. Like I said earlier, these are off another display, so they'll be going back there. But I want to get some better trees, add some shrubbery around, you know, the field. And also this fence line here, I want to extend that out going down to here as well. The road, I want to go with the double yellow line, like I mentioned before. The crossing, I need to make some signs for, because I was originally using the Erdl signs. And then this road here, got to do something with that to separate it from the drive around the shed. And the shed is going to be a case of getting it decaled the way I want it to be, and also getting some designated benches and toolboxes and stuff for that as well. And the last thing is also to go ahead and swap the yellow and white lines on the outside of the lanes for the interstate. And that was just dumbness on my part, painting them wrong like that. But yeah, I mean, there's some changes that I want to make to this, and who knows, I might come up with a few more ideas in the next year. So that's going to conclude my Dream Plan build series, and I gotta say that I had a lot of fun building this display, and I really enjoyed doing these videos for you all as well. And who knows, maybe this series will help some of those that want to give building 1/64 scale displays a try. But before I end the video, I want to give a shout out to a few people, starting with the YouTuber Sparkshot, aka Knuckles. Now, he pretty much inspired me to do this series, because I've been watching his Out and About in Harambe series where he builds an N-scale train layout. So, yeah, really enjoyed that. Thanks, Gavin. Also want to give a shout out to the YouTuber Mark Vicker at Mark's Toy Box. A lot of the little pieces that I have on my displays that I build, I purchased from him, especially the resin pieces that I'll paint and dress up and incorporate into my tables. So, yeah, you get the chance to check him out. Really great guy to deal with, has a lot of good stuff. Also want to give a shout out to the YouTuber baremetalHW. He too builds 1/64 scale displays, but they're quite a bit smaller. I think he calls them single car dioramas. So yeah, check him out. Also Marty, Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Really great guy. I love watching his videos. I've actually used quite a few of his techniques in some of the projects I've done. And yeah, give him a shout out, and who knows, maybe he'll give me a shout out too someday on his channel. Hopeful. But lastly, I want to give a shout out to a couple friends of mine, the YouTubers Bluebells5529 and Captain Rolls. They've supported me, this channel, and just want to say thanks to you guys as well. So yeah, that's it. I'll leave you guys with some photos of the display from the show. So yeah. Take care, everyone.